southern Iran, 28 kilometers southeast of Bushehr, 2:20 in the morning. 112 U.S. Army Rangers from the 75th Ranger Regiment were moving by boat and helicopter toward the Crescent Reactor Hub. Inside the outer walls, 436 Iranian forces were defending the reactor control block, the switch yard, and the backup power yard. The U.S. Army had 90 minutes to shut the whole site down. The Crescent Reactor Hub fed power to military labs, radar stations, and missile depots across the southern coast. Iran had built the site under thick concrete, buried cable runs, and 4 layers of fencing. 2 watchtowers covered the sea road. 3 bunkers held reserve troops. A hardened control room sat under the main reactor hall. The outer ring had cameras, motion sensors, and floodlights tied to backup generators. The Iranian forces believed the place could survive missiles, sabotage, and a direct raid. The U.S. Army plan was simple and fast. Alpha Element had 28 Rangers and would cut through the sea gate, clear the dock road, and seize the switch yard. Bravo Element had 30 Rangers and would land west of the hub, destroy the air defense guns, and open the service gate. Charlie Element had 26 Rangers and would breach the reactor support block, reach the underground control room, and plant thermite on the grid controls. Delta Element had 28 Rangers and would cover the other 3 elements, cut reinforcements on the highway, and hold the extraction lane with MK18 Mod 0, M240B machine gun, and Javelin teams. At 2:28, the assault began. 2 MH-47 helicopters dropped Bravo and Charlie on separate hard pads west of the complex. The 4 combat raiding craft pushed Alpha toward the seawall. Delta split into 3 positions on the highway and the ridge above the fuel yard. The first shots came from suppressed MK18 CQBR rifles as Bravo cut down 2 tower guards. Alpha hit the sea gate with C4. The blast opened a hole in the steel and knocked out the nearest camera mast. Iranian forces inside the dock area thought the explosion came from a fuel accident. That confusion lasted 46 seconds. Bravo rushed the first U-23 2-gun pit and killed 6 Iranian forces with M4A1SO PMOD-2 fire before the crew could traverse the barrels. A Carl Gustav M3 round hit the second pit and flipped the shield into the sand. Charlie crossed the service trench, hit a locked blast door with a shaped charge, and entered the support block. Alpha cleared the dock sheds with flash grenades and short bursts. Delta fired 1 Javelin at a troop truck moving from the east barracks. The missile struck at 2:31. The truck burned in the road and blocked the first relief force. At 2:34, Iranian forces understood the site was under attack from 4 sides. Sirens came on. Floodlights swept the yard. A PKM machine gun opened from the roof above the coolant pumps and pinned Alpha behind stacked cable drums. An Alpha Grenadier fired 2 40mm rounds through the roof access door. The firing stopped. Bravo reached the western service gate and cut the chain with DEET cord. The gate fell inward. Charlie moved down a concrete stairwell toward the lower control level. 2 Iranian forces fired AK-74 rifles from the landing. Charlie answered with 3 grenades and 6 rifle bursts. The stairwell filled with dust. The Rangers kept moving. 6 minutes into the operation, Delta saw the 2nd Iranian reaction force leave a barracks block north of the hub. It was 38 men in 3 pickups with DSHK heavy guns. Delta let the convoy close to 180 meters. Then an M2 Browning and 2 M24OB machine guns opened together. The lead pickup rolled into the ditch. The second truck stopped and its gunner tried to fire. An AT-4 hit the engine and split the hood open. The third truck reversed into a drainage wall. Surviving Iranian forces ran for cover and began firing RPG-7 rockets uphill. 1 rocket exploded short. Another hit a rock shelf and sent fragments into 2 Rangers. Both stayed in the fight. Inside the complex, Alpha pushed toward the switchyard. The ground was open and exposed. Iranian forces fired from transformer pads, cable trenches, and a low concrete office beside the breakers. Alpha could not stay in the open. A fire team crawled left under the metal frames, while a MK11 Mod 0 sniper on the dock crane picked targets through the floodlights. 3 Iranian forces fell beside a PKM machine gun. Then Alpha rushed the office, kicked in the side door, and cleared 3 rooms in 19 seconds. 1 Ranger was hit in the shoulder by an AK-74 round. The switchyard lane was now open. At 2:38, Bravo turned east and hit the backup generator yard. Iranian forces had 24 men around 4 generator housings and a sandbag line. Bravo used smoke, then split into 2 assault files. A MK18 grenade launcher fired 12 rounds over the wall. The blast tore open the sandbags and dropped the first line. Bravo stormed in behind the smoke. 2 Rangers placed linear charges across the fuel links between generators. Another pair shot out the control panels with M4A1 rifles. The charges blew at 2:40. Backup power for the floodlights, cameras, and inner doors failed across the western half of the site. 8 minutes into the assault, Charlie reached the lower control corridor. The hall was narrow. The walls were thick. Iranian forces knew exactly where Charlie had to come from. A PKM machine gun at the far end cut the corridor with steady fire. Charlie dropped flat. A breacher slid a wheeled charge along the floor. It struck the machine gun tripod. The blast threw the gun sideways and cracked the wall panels. Charlie surged forward. 2 Rangers with MK18 CQBR rifles crossed first. A 3rd Ranger followed with a ballistic shield. They cleared the corridor, then hit the sealed control room door with another shaped charge. The hinges snapped. The door blew inward. The underground control room was still active. 6 Iranian technicians and 14 armed guards were trying to isolate the main grid from the outer yards. Charlie shot the guards first. Then the team leader ordered the technicians away from the panels. Thermite bars went onto the load balancers, relay cabinets, and emergency switch racks. 1 Ranger set timers for 14 minutes. Another cut the site fiber links with bolt cutters and placed C4 on the server cage. Charlie had reached the core of the mission, but the whole site was now awake and closing in. At 2:42, Iranian forces launched their hardest counterattack. 60 men from the North Barracks and the Eastern Tower line moved toward the switchyard and support block at the same time. Some came on foot, some used 2 armored utility carriers. Delta saw them first and called the movement. Alpha shifted 10 Rangers to the transformer lane. Bravo left 8 Rangers at the broken generator yard and pushed 22 men toward Charlie. The first armored carrier came through the inner gate with a DHK on top. A Carl Gustav M3 team from Bravo fired from 70 meters. The round hit low and broke the front axle. The carrier spun and blocked the gate. Iranian forces behind it scattered into the cable trenches. At 2:44, the fight for the inner yard spread into the coolant pump lane. Iranian forces tried to restart 1 generator bank by hand and bring the east floodlights back. Bravo saw the lights flicker and sent 6 Rangers across a drainage cut. 2 Rangers threw grenades through the service windows. 4 more entered with MK18 CQBR rifles and cleared the room. 1 Iranian officer reached for the breaker panel. A Bravo Ranger shot the panel first. Sparks flashed. The east floodlights died again for good there. 10 minutes into the raid, the fight became close and violent. Alpha and the Iranian forces traded fire across the transformers. Sparks blew from cut lines. Smoke drifted over the switch racks. An Iranian RPG-7 team hit 1 breaker housing and threw burning oil across the lane. Alpha shifted right, used the smoke, and flanked the trench line. 3 Rangers jumped into the trench and cleared it with rifles and grenades. Bravo came through the gap and linked with Alpha near the central breaker yard. Together they built a firing line with 2 M249 SAW gunners in the middle and M4A1 rifles on both ends. Iranian forces tried to cross the open ground. Most never made it halfway. At 2:46, Charlie reported the thermite was still burning and the C4 on the server cage was set. Then Iranian forces hit the lower corridor from both ends. They had found a maintenance stair and a cable duct that bypassed the first breach. Charlie was suddenly boxed in. 2 Rangers dropped to one knee and fired controlled bursts down the rear duct while the shield man held the stair corner. The first Iranian push broke on the shield. The second push threw 2 grenades. Charlie kicked one back. The other exploded in the hall and wounded 3 Rangers. A combat medic packed one leg wound, wrapped a neck wound, and pushed the 3rd Ranger back to the wall. Charlie held the room. 12 minutes into the operation, Delta had a new problem. 3 fast patrol boats left a pier east of the hub and moved toward the extraction lane. Each boat had a DHK and 8 Iranian forces. Alpha could not spare men. Bravo was tied down near the central yard. Delta solved it from the ridge. A Javelin destroyed the lead boat at 2:48. A MK18 Mod 0 team raked the second boat until it drifted into the pier piles. The 3rd boat turned away, but a second Javelin hit the waterline and split it open. The sea approach stayed clear. By 2:50, the reactor hub was losing power in pieces. The west cameras were dead. The north fence alarms were dead. Half the interior doors would not lock. Charlie detonated the C4 on the server cage. The blast killed the last guard in the lower hall and cut internal network control. Alpha stormed the main switch building and found 11 Iranian forces behind steel cabinets. The first room fell to grenades. The second room took 31 seconds. The third room took longer because a PKM gunner had a clear line down the center aisle. An Alpha Ranger fired a Carl Gustaf M3 round through the side wall. The gun stopped. Alpha planted thermite on the breaker panels and power transfer units. At 2:52, Iranian forces made their last organized stand in the reactor support court. 43 men gathered behind 2 concrete water tanks, a loader truck, and a row of pipe frames. They had 1 RPG-7, 2 PKM machine guns, and boxes of AK-74 magazines. Bravo and Charlie pinned them from 2 sides, but the cover was strong. Delta shifted 1 M24 OB team inside the eastern gate and opened from the flank. The first water tank burst and flooded the court. Bravo used the noise and spray to rush the loader truck. Charlie came out of the support block at the same time. The trapped Iranian forces broke apart. 21 were killed in the open. 14 threw down their weapons. 8 tried to run and were cut down near the pipe frames. 15 minutes into the assault, Charlie confirmed the underground timers had less than 3 minutes left. Alpha pulled back from the switch building. Bravo cleared the last rooms of the support block. Delta moved 1 team to the sea gate and another to the west pad. At 2:55, the thermite inside the control room burned through the relay banks and the load balancers failed together. The reactor hub disconnected from its regional distribution lines. Large sections of the Bushehr military grid went dark. Radar sites dropped offline. 3 lab annexes lost power. 2 missile storage compounds switched to emergency batteries. The mission was not over. Iranian forces from outside the hub were still coming. At 2:57, Delta spotted 64 more troops and 6 technical vehicles racing from the highway junction north of the coast road. The U.S. Army had what it came for. Staying longer would trap the whole force. Delta fired 1 last Javelin into the lead vehicle. Bravo used a MK19 grenade launcher to break the road behind it. Alpha threw smoke across the sea gate. Charlie carried 2 wounded Rangers up from the lower level and loaded them onto stretchers. The Rangers began pulling out in order: Alpha first, Charlie second, Bravo third, Delta last. At 3:02, Iranian forces reached the outer wall just as the first U.S. Army boats pushed off and the helicopters lifted from the west pad. 1Z U-23, two crew that had survived the first strike tried to bring its gun back into action. A Bravo fire team hit the pit with M4 A1 rifles and one AT4. The gun rolled backward and burned. Iranian forces fired wildly from the shore road and the north towers. Most rounds hit concrete, water, or empty sand. Delta stayed on the ridge for 4 more minutes, firing controlled bursts from MK48 Mod 0 and M240B positions to keep the road blocked. Then Delta broke contact, boarded the last craft, and left the coast behind. By 3:10, the raid was over. The Iron Crescent Reactor Hub was dark. Its control room was burned out. Its generator yard was wrecked. Its network cage was destroyed. Its switch building was crippled. The U.S. Army lost 4 Rangers killed and 11 wounded. Iranian forces lost 147 killed, 96 wounded, and 61 captured. They had 2 armored utility carriers, 7 pickups, 3 patrol boats, 2 ZU-23-2 guns, 4 DSHK heavy guns, 6 PKM machine guns, the backup generator yard, the lower control room, and the main switch building were destroyed or disabled. Total equipment and facility damage was estimated at $412 million. Iran had believed the Iron Crescent Reactor Hub could hold long enough for reinforcements to seal the coast and crush any raid. Instead, 112 U.S. Army Rangers broke 4 defense rings, shut down the site, and were gone before the outer cordon could close. Iranian forces had walls, bunkers, cameras, guns, and numbers. What they did not have was 112 U.S. Army Rangers willing to take the whole grid apart in 50 minutes.